Welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us. Today, we're looking at something incredibly unique.
Yep, it's definitely out there.
We're talking about the hidden mechanics and formulas of prophecy. Now, when most of us think about prophecy, we probably picture something mystical or unpredictable, maybe just a spontaneous flash of divine insight.
Right, like a sudden feeling.
Exactly. But the source material we have today treats it more like a rigorous science. We have a stack of excerpts from the 2018 book, Prophetic Codes, and it's written by Shepherd Bushiri, an author who describes himself as a major prophet.
It's a genuinely fascinating read. What we're doing today is looking closely at this text to understand the highly specific frameworks, or as the author calls them, codes, that he claims to use to tap into the spiritual realm.
And we should probably clarify something right off the bat for you, the listener.
Oh, for sure. Just to set the stage, this source material makes some very bold, highly specific religious claims. Our mission here is not to validate those claims, nor are we here to debunk them.
Right.
We are simply going to impartially explore the fascinating concepts, the historical anecdotes, and the intricate systems of spiritual mechanics that the author presents. We're just examining the architecture of his belief system without taking any sides.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the author's own background is where this entire architecture really begins, and it is not a traditional starting point.
Not at all.
He actually grew up in a Muslim family, but he writes about being absolutely captivated by Christian legends from a very young age. He was specifically drawn to historical figures who supposedly did the unfathomable, things that just completely broke the rules of the natural world.
That is a crucial part of his origin story.
Hmm.
He mentions historical figures like Martin Luther and Billy Graham, but he places a massive emphasis on a man named Smith Wigglesworth.
Right, Wigglesworth.
Yeah, according to the author, Wigglesworth was a legendary, almost mythical figure known for doing things that defied all human logic. We're talking about claims of bringing his wife back to life or healing terminal illnesses like cancer, which Wigglesworth reportedly described as a living evil spirit.
The stories about Wigglesworth in this text are intense, especially the mechanics of how he operated. The author details how Wigglesworth would literally punch sick people in the stomach to heal them of internal pains.
Which is wild.
It is. There are accounts where he reportedly hit them so hard they were propelled across the room. Now, when people asked Wigglesworth why he used such a violent, controversial approach to healing, he had a very specific rationale.
He would say, "I do not hit them, I hit the devil."
Exactly. And the author read these stories and basically challenged God, saying he wanted to bring about that kind of highly visible, undeniable impact.
It shows that from the very beginning, the author was attracted to a faith that was physical, aggressive, and highly mechanical, which leads right into what he describes as his own catalyst, his own divine encounter.
The big moment.
Yeah, this is a foundational moment in the text because it sets the rules for everything he claims to do later.
He describes this encounter happening on a hot summer day. He's walking through the corridors after a class. The birds are chirping, the breeze is gentle, but suddenly he feels this rushing heat wave completely take over his physical body.
Like out of nowhere.
Totally out of nowhere. He has no idea where it's coming from. Then a blinding, piercing, bright light beams right in front of his eyes. He collapses to the floor, losing his breath, actually thinking he might be dying in that hallway.
Wow.
But then he hears a thunderous voice that makes the ground quake, calling out his name, Shepherd.
And in this narrative, he is completely transported. He says he's no longer in the human world. He is in a heavenly realm where everything is incredibly bright. But the key detail here is how he perceives the environment.
Right.
He notes that even the plants and the stones have a life of their own. Everything is communicative. It's in this space that he claims God spoke to him, telling him he was being called to be a prophet for a stubborn people. And to equip him for this, God was giving him specialized spiritual eyes and ears.
The immediate aftermath of this vision is where we first see these mechanics in action. He wakes up from this experience with a nurse standing over him. And instead of asking what happened, he immediately starts prophesying to her.
Just right away.
Instantly. He accurately tells her exactly what her name is, her home address, and deeply personal details about her life. It's presented as an instant, total transformation of his sensory perception.
If we look at how different people process intuitive or spiritual information, the text provides some very interesting context here by contrasting the author with his peers. For instance, the author mentions his mentor, a man named Hubert Angel.
Okay.
According to the book, when Angel prophesies, the information comes to him visually, almost perfectly formatted. He claims to literally see prophecies like reading newspaper headlines in the spiritual realm.
Like the text is just handed to him.
Exactly. Others might see things like a videotape playing past and future events.
Hmm.
But Bushiri claims God showed him 120 different ways to prophesy, and his primary, most unique method is through what he calls prophetic codes.
That part of the text really caught my attention. He doesn't just get a vague feeling or a pre-written newspaper headline. He gets raw encryption.
Yeah.
To illustrate this, he tells this incredible story about being in his church and calling a woman up to the altar. But instead of just speaking to her, he walks over to a whiteboard. I want you to imagine sitting in that congregation, waiting for a profound spiritual message, and the man at the front just starts writing a string of seemingly random characters.
It's just completely out of context.
Right. WZ, PM, W8334, 1314, 80MLQ. Just total gibberish to anyone else in the room.
What's fascinating here is how he treats this spiritual revelation like a literal cipher waiting to be cracked. He claims that every time he looks at a person, he sees these codes hovering around them.
Like the Matrix or something.
Exactly like that. Through his spiritual inspiration, he didn't just read a message. He decoded that whiteboard sequence right there on the spot, step by step.
Yeah.
He explained to the congregation that the W stood for Washi, which happened to be the woman's son. The P stood for Patrick, her husband.
Every single letter and number represented a highly specific, verifiable detail about her life, her family, and her timeline.
So he approaches prophecy not as a vague impression, but as a data sequence to be decrypted. And he starts breaking down the specific recurring codes he uses to access this data.
Right. And code 1 is what he calls the code of music and art. Now, we all know music sets a mood. You play upbeat music to exercise or put on soft music to relax.
Sure.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The author is claiming something much more structural. In his framework, music is a literal mechanical trigger to access the prophetic dimension.
The author grounds this idea deep in history and biology. He points to the Book of Genesis and a figure named Jubal, who is credited as the inventor of all string and wind instruments.
Yeah.
But to prove his point, the text makes a very specific, surprising scientific claim. It states that if you take a leaf from a tree, cut it in half, and put it on a highly sensitive scientific machine, it emits sound waves.
Nature's innate melody.
Exactly. It produces a frequency similar to a musical instrument.
He's making a tangible claim here, that nature itself has an innate, measurable frequency. The chirping birds, the rushing rivers, the wind, it's all a continuous melody.
And Jubal didn't just invent an art form, he created a framework for humans to tap into that existing underlying frequency.
To prove how mechanical this is, the author uses the biblical story of the prophet Elisha. Elisha is asked to give a prophecy to some kings about an impending war. But Elisha doesn't just start speaking. He demands that a musician, specifically a harpist, be brought to him. And the text notes carefully, it wasn't before the music and it wasn't after. It was only when the musician played that the hand of God came upon Elisha and he began to see into the spiritual realm.
It was a crucial operational distinction. He needed the frequency to access the realm. But the author is very careful to differentiate between simple musical talent and what he calls a spiritual anointing.
It's not just about playing the right chords flawlessly.
No, definitely not. To explain this, he uses the story of King David playing the harp for King Saul, who's being tormented by evil spirits. David wasn't just entertaining Saul. Because David's music was anointed, it altered the atmosphere. It created an environment that was physically intolerable for those specific demonic spirits.
The author actually calls this dynamic a pressure cooker.
A pressure cooker is the perfect analogy for his framework. The anointed music agitates the demons with spiritual heat, effectively coercing them to flee. So the music isn't a backdrop. It's a weapon.
A literal tool of spiritual warfare.
And a precise instrument for prophetic activation. You see parallels to this in modern psychology, actually. Think about how athletes use very specific playlists, certain tempos and frequencies, to shut down anxiety and trigger a physiological state of extreme focus or flow.
The author is basically arguing for a spiritual version of that physiological hack.
Yes, exactly.
And he applies this hack directly to his modern church services. He says there are times he will be standing in front of his congregation and he will intentionally silence the entire choir. He'll tell everyone to just raise their hands in complete silence.
Complete silence.
Then he will instruct his piano player to play very specific notes on the keyboard. He claims that the moment those specific acoustic notes hit the air, His spirit connects to them, and he is catapulted into a different dimension of sight.
And it's not just an isolated experience for him.
No, he says the congregation instantly begins to see visions as well. He mentions one woman who, just from hearing those specific piano notes in that silent room, immediately received a highly detailed vision about global worship coming to their church.
It shows how he views the environment as highly malleable. You punch in the right auditory code, and the spiritual environment shifts instantly.
Okay, so auditory inputs can manipulate the space and act as a trigger. But what about visual inputs? Because he doesn't stop at sound. He actually treats human sight like a two-way street, which brings us to code 2, the code of gazing.
Gazing, right?
He uses the Greek word atinizo, which translates to stretching or straining your sight towards an object without any distraction. It's not just a casual glance. It is an intense, deliberate, sustained focus.
To illustrate the mechanics of this, he uses another story about the prophet Elisha. Elisha meets a man named Hazael. The text says Elisha fixed his gaze and stared at Hazael for so long and with such intensity that Hazael actually became profoundly embarrassed and uncomfortable.
I mean, you would be.
Oh, absolutely. But Elisha wasn't trying to intimidate him socially. The author argues that through that sustained, unbroken gazing, Elisha was literally pulling data from the spiritual realm, allowing him to foresee the terrible, evil things Hazael was destined to do in the future.
He also mentions Abraham, who was told to sacrifice his son. The text says Abraham looked up but somehow saw a ram caught in a thicket behind him.
Which geographically doesn't make sense.
Right. The author points this out to prove that spiritual gazing, once activated, isn't bound by physical direction or physical limitations. You can look up and see behind you. He claims this very code allows him to stand on the stage in his main church hall and accurately prophesy to people who are located 5 kilometers away in his overflow miracle tent.
Wow.
In his framework, distance means absolutely nothing to this code.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author provides a really fascinating synthesis of historical science and spirituality to explain how this works biologically.
Okay.
He references the physiological research of a scientist named Macready from the 1800s. Macready's research showed that the heart and the eyes are deeply connected. But crucially, the heart and cardiovascular system send far more signals to the brain than the brain sends down to the heart.
Which completely flips how we usually think about the brain running the show. We tend to think the brain dictates everything to the body.
Exactly. And the author maps this physiological observation directly onto his spiritual framework. He argues that if you embed the Word of God into your heart will literally send spiritual signals up to your eyes, bypassing the logical brain.
Wow.
It fundamentally changes your physical perception of reality. He says you stop seeing a small apartment and start seeing a mansion. You stop seeing a sick person and start seeing healing. The conditioned heart informs the eyes, activating true spiritual sight.
That heart-eye connection leads to one of the most gripping stories in the entire text. The author describes a moment where he called a man out in his massive auditorium. The man rushes forward, and the author tells him that a demon of anger is caging him.
Okay.
Then the author applies this code of gazing in real time. He physically touches the man's chest right over his heart and stares deeply into his eyes. And the author claims that in that exact moment, an entire storyline was instantly downloaded into his own spirit.
It acts as a direct physical data transfer.
Wait, so just by touching the man's chest and holding eye contact, he bypasses normal conversation entirely. What kind of information did he actually claim to extract in that moment?
The author revealed that this man was secretly planning to avenge the death of his brother.
Oh, wow.
The download was incredibly specific. He stated the man was so consumed by anger that he had already procured a hidden gun, and he was actively planning to go kill the specific people he suspected were responsible.
That is intense.
Very. The author claims to have downloaded this entire secret plot just by physically connecting to the chest and engaging the eyes. Upon hearing this, the man broke down in tears and completely confessed to the plan.
It is a profound example of how the author views the physical body, the heart, the eyes, the chest, as literal hardware that can be plugged into to download spiritual data. But if he can do all this from a distance or just by staring into someone's eyes, why does it matter where he stands?
Location.
Right, because that brings us to Code 3, prophetic positioning. So what does this all mean? We've talked about manipulating sound, we've talked about hacking vision, but the author argues that your precise physical location might be the most important factor of all.
The core concept here requires understanding a specific theological distinction he makes. He argues that while God is omnipresent, meaning he is everywhere all the time,
Yeah.
He does not manifest his presence everywhere.
Okay.
To explain this, the author introduces the concept of portals. These are specific, localized, invisible geographical entities that act as direct, open channels between heaven and earth.
And he throws out some surprising facts regarding the geography of these portals. He claims that currently around the globe there are exactly 18 gates to hell.
18.
But conversely, there are gates to heaven. And these portals aren't just limited to famous holy sites or ancient temples. He says that portals can exist in highly specific, completely random spots inside your own house.
Which is a crazy thought.
Think about, have you ever been pacing around your house, trying to think through a problem or clear your head, and suddenly you hit a specific spot in the hallway where you just feel a massive burst of energy or sudden crystal clear clarity?
Yeah, I think everyone has felt that.
The author says stop right there. You didn't just have a good thought, you just physically stepped into a portal.
This translates into very actionable mechanical instructions during his live services. He frequently tells congregants, take 3 steps forward, stop there.
Like literal choreography.
Yes, the people watching might think it's just theatrical staging, but within his operational framework, he is literally navigating them into the precise geographical coordinates of an invisible portal.
Right.
To back this up, he points to the biblical figure Balaam, who couldn't just speak from wherever he was standing.
Right.
He had to physically move from his location to a desolate hill to hear from God. The author explains that the word desolate means empty. To download this high-level spiritual information, the mind must be entirely emptied of worldly cares.
You need the physical isolation of a desolate hill or a specific portal to achieve that mental emptiness.
Exactly.
He takes this requirement for mental emptiness so literally that he refuses to engage in casual conversation or even greet anyone before a service. He keeps his mind entirely blank so he doesn't miss the download when he steps into the right position.
Because the interference would block it.
And he notes you will absolutely know when you hit a portal because he lists very visceral physical symptoms. According to the source, if you step into one of these coordinates, you might suddenly feel electric currents vibrating in your hands.
Wow.
Your legs might start shivering uncontrollably. Or you might feel a sudden, unexplainable cold breeze blow across your face, even if you are entirely indoors with the windows shut.
This raises an important question about how we interact with the people around us within this framework. The author notes that sometimes he will be standing right next to someone he is trying to prophesy to, and he gets absolutely nothing.
Total stat.
Total silence. He claims this happens because he is caught inside the negative cage of that person's problems or anxieties. The proximity is actually causing interference.
So what does he do?
To fix it, he has to physically step away. He has to take literal steps backward to disconnect from their interference and find a clear portal to receive the download. He connects all of this environmental positioning to the biblical concept of Shiloh.
Let's talk about Shiloh because that seems to be the ultimate goal of all these codes.
Exactly. Shiloh translates roughly to a place of rest. But he doesn't mean taking a nap or kicking your feet up. He defines it as an active spiritual state of absolute reliance. It's a profound peace of mind where you're completely integrated and sober in your thinking.
It's hard to find that nowadays.
Think about how difficult it is today to achieve an empty mind. We are constantly barraged by notifications, anxieties, and the cages of other people's stress. Shiloh is the precise opposite of that. It is a highly curated state of detachment where the noise stops.
A place of absolute rest where the static clears, the interference drops away, and the signal comes through perfectly. Okay, we have covered some truly fascinating ground today as we explored the architecture of this text.
We really have.
We started with the concept of prophecy as an encrypted sequence treating spiritual insight like cracking letters and numbers on a whiteboard. We looked at the code of music where specific acoustic frequencies act as a pressure cooker to shift the atmosphere.
To the code of gazing.
Right, the code of gazing where the heart sends biological and spiritual signals to the eyes, allowing a person to download someone's deepest secrets just by holding intense focus. And finally, the code of positioning, the idea that invisible portals of clarity are scattered all around us waiting to be stepped into.
And regardless of what you personally believe about the religious or supernatural nature of these specific claims, there's immense value in examining the underlying psychology of these frameworks for you, the listener.
Absolutely.
If we strip away the mystical terminology, the author is essentially talking about the mechanics of human focus. Think about the importance of curating your own physical environment, finding your own portals in your house or office where you can focus best.
Yeah.
Managing your gazing. Being acutely aware of what you intensely focus on, because what you focus on inevitably shapes how you perceive the reality around you. And utilizing the right soundtrack or auditory triggers to shift your mood and achieve that state of clarity, that state of Shiloh or deep mental rest.
The architecture of these codes is a fascinating study in human intention and the search for profound clarity in a very noisy world.
I completely agree. The practical applications of those concepts are undeniable.
For sure.
And it leaves us with something really compelling to think about as you go about the rest of your day. If you had to identify a literal portal of absolute clarity in your own home or your own daily routine, a highly specific physical spot where the noise of the world completely drops away and your intuition speaks to you perfectly without any static, where exactly is it?
It's a great question. And what is the specific music you need to activate it?
It's a great question to reflect on and an experiment worth trying. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked the hidden mechanics of the prophetic codes.
We will catch you on the next deep dive. Keep looking closely at the world around you.